Sällsynta jordartsmetaller har seglat upp som en het politisk fråga. USA kräver tillgång till Ukrainas sällsynta jordartsmetaller för att mäkla fred. Kina har stoppat exporten av sällsynta jordartsmetaller till USA efter hot om handelstullar, och en del av lockelsen med Grönland är just de här sällsynta jordartsmetallerna. Förra året antog EU en ny förordning som heter Critical Raw Materials Act, förkortas CRMA. Den ska göra det mycket enklare och snabbare att starta gruvor i Europa och Sverige för att bryta de här metallerna. Och det här har i sin tur plötsligt gjort Norra Kärr, en fyndighet ovanför Gränna och Vättern, till en het politisk fråga i EU och Sverige. So we say welcome to Kurt Budge, CEO of Greenna Mineral, who has submitted an application for mining concession to open a mine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you explain as simply as possible why Norra Kärr has suddenly become so interesting?
Yes, Critical Raw Materials Act got passed last year, as you talked about, and one of the critical raw materials is rare earth elements. Rare earth elements go into permanent magnets for the clean energy transition and also defense applications. So things like the permanent magnets in wind turbines or electric motors, or other applications, technology applications. And the supply chain is dominated by China. And so the Critical Raw Materials Act is looking at Europe's long-term supply chain resilience and looking at diversified sources of supply. And so that's why Norra Kärr has come to the forefront of people's understanding with regards to rare earths, because it's part of that story of diversifying sources of supply of rare earth elements.
How large a portion of Sweden's and Europe's need for these material can Norra Kärr supply, do you think?
So in 2023, the statistics show that Europe imported about 18,300 tons of rare earth elements, and when Norra Kärr is up in production, we'll produce over 5,300 tons. So it's quite significant in terms of the context of the overall demand, current demand. But looking into the future, our need for wind turbines or electric vehicles is only going to increase, and also when it comes to security considerations for Europe, defense applications, we also need rare earths for those. So the current state of play in the world is there are lots of conflicts, and so therefore even with that you need more rare earths. So it's a story where the demands of the market are only going to grow.
CRMA blev även svensk lag förra våren, och ambitionen är att ledtiden för att starta en ny gruva ska sjunka från 15 till bara 2 år. För att driva på den här utvecklingen ska EU utse ett antal strategiska projekt som ska få extra stöd för att starta snabbt, och Norra Kärr har ansökt om det här. What benefits would it bring to be a designated strategic project in CRMA?
Our strategic project status is really a game changer. I have experience of mining lease applications taking several years. I think the context for a project like Norra Kärr now is very different because of the geopolitics. And if we get strategic project status, it puts a definitive legal timeframe on permitting an extraction project, and that's 27 months. So that's a game changer. That provides certainty to stakeholders and investors in a project. And also, it suggests that it will facilitate access to capital. And those are the two things really that, when it comes to entrepreneurial businesses like Leading Edge Materials and Greenna Mineral, that certainty around permitting and access to capital are often two of the roadblocks for expedient project development. So the Critical Raw Materials Act and Strategic Project Status are really, enablers of projects coming into development, such that we can then start to create regional supply chains, which is the goal of the Critical Raw Materials Act.
What are your chances to become a strategic project, do you think?
What you've seen up until the Critical Raw Materials Act is that there was a disconnect between the EU and sovereign states. So sovereign states had their own responsibilities for permitting, and now what you've got is complete alignment between the EU and sovereign member states, and you've got these key big themes, which are climate change. Climate is still warming up, and there are conflicts taking place in Europe. So all of these together mean, Norra Kärr is critically important to the big story, the big picture.
Som Kurt säger här då så är fyndigheten i Norra Kärr känd sedan gammalt. Den upptäcktes redan på tidigt 1900-tal och Boliden hade länge fyndigheten, rättigheten till den. De släppte det i början på 00-talet och sedan dess har då bolaget som Kurt Budge representerar, som moderbolaget heter Leading Edge och de som har sökt koncessionen heter Greenna Mineral haft rättigheten. Och redan på 2010-talet gjorde bolaget försök att öppna gruvan, men det gick i stöpet för ungefär 5 år sedan. Och då infinner sig frågan såklart, what makes you think that it will go better this time than last time?
Well, let's not forget that around 2013 that Norra Kärr had an exploitation concession, and that was when the project was designed in a very different way, where we had industrial activities taking place actually on site. What we have now is we've radically simplified the project such the environmental footprint is 65% less in terms of the land use, and also issues like water consumption have been significantly reduced, and we're producing more products than just the rare earths. We have an industrial mineral called nepheline syenite, which we're also looking to produce from the project. So what you've got is a project that's been radically simplified in terms of its scale, its potential environmental impact, and its sustainability has been increased because we're looking to make products out of most of the materials that we actually excavate from the site. So I think, again, touching on the fact that the context for the project now is completely different. The geopolitics, the new US president, the US president's interest in mineral resources of Greenland or rare earths in Ukraine. There's a land grab going on to who can get their hands on deposits and resources first. And so therefore, when it comes to Sweden and when it comes to Europe, a project like Norra Kärr, which is described as being Europe's most advanced rare earth project, is critical to that supply story with, as we've touched on, a continuing growth in the demand side.
Och för att förklara då, så till skillnad mot kanske många andra gruvor så är den här platsen förmodligen rätt känd för många av våra tittare. Den ligger alltså, det heter Norra Kärr och det ligger strax norr om Gränna. Så om man skulle åka från Jönköping och passera Bra hus där man har en vacker utsikt över Vättern och 1 mil senare om man tittar åt andra hållet, vilket man ju sällan gör, så är det ju, ser man skog och växtlighet. Och där inne, ungefär 150 meter från motorvägen, ska den här gruvan ligga. Och läget är då 150 meter innanför motorvägen, det är ungefär 1 kilometer från Vättern och ungefär 150 meter över Vättern. Och det här då har skapat vissa utmaningar för att Vättern är norra Europas största vattentäkt och idag vattentäkt för ungefär 300 000 människor och inom en snar framtid planerad för ungefär 600 000 människor. Och utav rent då fysikaliska lagar så blir det så att det som läcker uppifrån rinner ner. Och det här har då varit och är en stor fråga för många kommuner runt Vättern, hur gruvan ska hanteras säkert ifrån till Vättern. So the question is of course Lake Vättern, which is as you know well. So the question is quite obvious. Whatever leaks from the heights above Vättern will probably end up in Vättern. How do you secure that this will not happen?
Well, the advantage of Norra Kärr is that the mineralization and the host rocks are relatively inert. So if you expose them to air and water, there's no chemical reactions that take place. There's no pollutants that are created. And with the design of the project now, which is part of the new mining lease application, is that, as I've touched on, all the industrial activities that were to be cited with the previous application, which was granted an exploitation concession, we will locate them at a separate site, an industrial site, remote from Norra Kärr. So what you have in effect, and I keep saying this to everybody I speak to, is effectively a quarry. You know, a quarry that is mining both industrial minerals and rare earths mineralization, and then is undertaking physical processing at site, which will involve concentrating the rare earths and then shipping them to this industrial facility, and then also exporting an industrial mineral, the nepheline syenite. So the nature of the operation is no different really to other quarrying operations that are already happening around Lake Vättern, and you can actually see one of those on the other side of the water. So, you know, what we're proposing now is not the threat that was perceived with the original application. we as a company have just got to do a much better job of communicating the new design to stakeholders that, rightly had some concerns about the industrial project that was proposed previously. We've addressed those concerns, but what we haven't done is communicated effectively the differences, and that's something that we must do.
So there's been a lot of municipalities have responded to the consultation, and one question that a lot of the cities around Vättern ask is that because you are not a super big company, and how can they know that you're sustainable for the 25 years that the concession lasts, and with all the risks and whatever? What is your answer to that?
I struggle sometimes with being challenged. Oh, but you could run out of business. I'm not in the business of running out of money. Our ambition is to create a sustainable business, and what you can see is the past shows that we have done that since 2009 in a succession of companies.
Do you have any inkling on when the EU will make public who is these projects?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the end of March. It was supposed to be the end of last year, but now it's the end of March. So in this business, I've had to wait for decisions on several occasions, and so now we're having to wait till the end of March.
It's a bit of an irony, isn't it, that they have a project that is going to shorten the time to start the mine, but the first thing that happens is that it actually is delayed.
Yeah, it's that there is some irony to that. But then what they did get 170 applications. So, and I don't think they were expecting 170 applications. So we have to trust that the process they're going through is to identify the good ones. And and I think, in the work that they're doing, it's about giving Europe options for meeting its own needs. So yeah, I trust in the process.
And if you don't become a designated project, what happens then with the concession?
Well, I don't think anything really changes, but I tend not to think I'm an optimist. I have been for much of my career. I'm only thinking about developing this project. So whatever the outcome, I think the process is you can still apply for exploitation concessions. You can still raise capital. I just think that the Critical Raw Materials Act and the strategic designation is an accelerator. Without that, it will be a shame if we don't get it, but I don't envisage that, especially again when you think about the discussion around Norra Kärr and its long history and the fact it's national interest. It's very difficult for me to consider that we won't get strategic project designation, but I'm not in charge of the decision, so I can't say 100%.
Okay, thank you, Kurt, for visiting us and talking to us about this.
Thanks very much.
Det här är en podd av EFN Ekonomikanalen. Ansvarig utgivare är Leo Lagerkrans.